Hey everyone, Mr. Skelton here, back at Lesson 9, Unit 3. Today we're going to be continuing our discussion on completing the square, and we're going to use it in a different way today, and we're going to do that to rewrite equations. It's going to be a little bit different than what you've seen in Lesson 8, but I'm going to try to keep it as close to the same as possible. There's multiple ways you can go about doing this, but I'm going to try my best to keep it as close as I can to what you did in Lesson 8. So here's the situation. We're going to be rewriting this equation in vertex form by completing the square. Now, normally when we would look at this and we want to do vertex form, we do negative b over 2a, find the x-coordinate of the vertex, plug it in, find your y, and then plug in your h and your k for vertex form, right? So a couple things to point out here. Let's just make sure we're all on the same page and not skipping over anything important. Let's talk about vertex form. Vertex form, remember, is y equals a, x minus h quantity squared plus k. So that's what we want our answer to look like, and obviously your answer is right down here, okay? But we'll get to that, hopefully we'll get to that here in a little bit. All right, so how do we do this using completing the square? So let's try to keep it as close as we can to what we did previous. So I'm going to kind of sub out this y, even though I'm going to put it back in here towards the end, and I'm going to subtract 1, right? I'm going to subtract 1 to the other side, and I'm going to leave a little space. So negative 1, leave a little space, and then rewrite the problem as x squared plus x squared, or minus x squared plus 4x. Okay, now normally when we were doing this on completing the square, we would just divide everything by negative 1. The problem with that is we want to have an a value, and we want to keep it into vertex form. So in all the problems we do, and even if you take a look at this slide here, number 2, you have an a value of negative 5. Here you have an a value of negative 16. We want our final answer to have that a value, and so what we want to do is we want to factor out whatever it is. Remember, we always want x squared by itself. X squared needs to be alone, right? We don't want anything next to it. A negative sign, a 5 is 16, so I'm going to divide a negative 1 out of everything. Leave my space. And so that's, I know that's a little bit different, but it's essentially what we did before. We just didn't factor it out. We just divided it out. When we factor it out, it's got to be being represented in our problem. All right, so let's complete the square here. So this is x squared minus 4x. So if I take negative 4, which is our b value, take half of it and square it, I should get plus 4 here. Now, what is going to be on the other side? Well, if I add 4 to this side, what goes here? It's not really a plus 4, right? Because this is a minus 1 times negative 4. So that's really a minus 4 here, so this needs to be a minus 4 there, okay? And so what this ends up being is a minus 5 equaling negative 1. This gets written as x minus 2 quantity squared. So the big thing, you can't miss this, is I know I put a plus 4 here because that's half of b squared, but remember this negative 1 is out in front of it, so I really didn't add 4. I really added negative 4, which is negative 1 and negative 4. So that's why I put, if I add negative 1 here, or negative 4 here, which it really is because it's negative 1 times positive 4, then I got to put it there. Then I would add this 5 to the other side, put it there, and just replace my y back in. I have my answer. Okay. Now I'm going to show this to you in a second way. So I'm going to call this way number 1. I'm going to show this to you in a second way very quickly, and you may like this way better. I don't know. So this is another way to do it. You factor out that negative 1, and you have x squared plus 4x. Leave a space, and then put the plus. Don't move the plus 1 to the other side. Just keep it on that same side. Okay. And so I'm only factoring out a negative 1 out of the first 2 terms. And so what I'm left with, again, is the same situation. Sorry, this is supposed to be a negative 4x. So I factored out a negative 1. So I take half of b squared. I still get plus 4 here. And now I go, okay, if this is a plus 4 here, it's negative 1 times 4, which is a negative 4. So I have to do the opposite because it's still on the same side. So I put the plus 4 here. And I still get the same thing. I get negative 1 x minus 2 quantity squared plus 5. And now you don't have to move things from one side to the other. It's totally up to you. Okay? So I honestly, I go back and forth. I'll do it both ways. You just have to make sure if you do it this way, remember this is a negative 4 here because it's negative 1 times 4. So you have to do the opposite because I did not move this to the other side. If you notice here, this is really a negative 4, and this is a negative 4. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other, the exact same thing, because that's a negative 4 here, that's a negative 4. Since I left a plus 1 on the right-hand side, this is really a negative 4, so that needs to be a positive 4. Okay? All right, let's see if we can apply it to another problem here. This problem says find the vertex. So always important to know what we're trying to do here. Find the vertex. That tells me that I'm going to just try to find h and k, but if I'm finding h and k, that probably means I'm going to go this route, right? And I'm going to just end up sucking h and k out of the vertex form. So I'm basically doing the same thing I did in the very first slide. So let's get after it here. I'm going to actually use method 2 that I did on the back side, or the front side of the sheet. So y equals, again, whatever is times by x squared needs to get factored out. I'm going to factor it out of the first two terms. So it's going to leave me with this. I leave the space. I'm going to leave the minus 7 on that side. And I'm going to finish completing the square. Now we're going to get a little complicated here. Half of b, so there's negative 3, take half of it and square it. That gives me 9/4. Now this is where one becomes a little challenging. The most common mistake students are going to make is right here. They're going to put negative 9/4, okay? Because they heard me say over here that this is really a negative 4. Negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4, right? And so because this one's on the same side, you have to do the opposite, which is put a positive 4 there. Well, what do we have going on? This is not really 9/4. This is negative 5 times 9/4. Well, what's negative 5 times 9/4? That's really negative 45/4, right? So what do I have to put over here? The opposite of this, because I did not move the 7 over here. So this is a positive 45/4. Okay? So this becomes y equals negative 5. Remember, I go half of b, so minus 3/2 squared, and now I need to get a common denominator here. I'm essentially going over negative 7 over 1. I'm going to get a common denominator of 4, so I get negative 28/4 plus 45/4, and that should give me 17/4. So the question says find the vertex. Here's my vertex form equation, and my h is 3/2, my k is 17/4. Okay. Take a look at number 3. Very similar situation. It says the following equation models the height of a snowball after being launched in the air. How high does the snowball get, and how long does it take to reach its height? Now again, back a couple lessons ago, we would just go negative b over 2a to find your x coordinate, right? We go negative 80 over 2 times that, find what x is, because this is how you find the vertex, or the highest point. So don't forget that. We're just doing this problem in a different way, which is completing the square. So again, it's like the shoelace analogy I use. You know, some people do loop, swoop, and pull, and some people say make 2 bunny ears and wrap them around and pull them tight or something like that. So we're doing the same thing we've done before, we're just doing it in a different way. So let's take a look. Y equals, again, whatever's multiplied by the x squared, I'm going to factor out. So I'm going to have x squared. And I believe 80 divided by 16 is 5, so that should be a minus 5x. Put a space and leave the plus 25 on the same side, and just know that whatever I get here times 16 has got to be the opposite going here. So I have negative 5. So I'm going to find this point, this number here by going half of b squared. So negative 5 squared is 25 over 4, positive 25 over 4. Okay? Now, that's not really a positive 25 over 4. That's negative 16 times positive 25 over 4. And let's do that real quick. So negative 16 times 25 is 400. Divided by 4 is a negative 100. So this negative 16 times 25/4 is really a negative 100. So that's what I, quote unquote, added or subtracted to this side. So I need to do the opposite here, which is add 100 to this side to balance it out. And so I'm going to rewrite my equation as y equals negative 16. This will become x minus 5/2 squared plus 125. So again, it says the following equation models the height of a snowball after being launched. How high means they want the vertex, right? So it's going to be something like this. They want that point. How high does a snowball get? So that's our HK. So again, this is 5/2, which as a decimal is 2.5 seconds. Our K is how high it is, which is 125 feet. All right? If you have questions, and you might, so you got to get used to this format. And again, I did both of example 2 and 3 the way I did. I called it number 2 on the very first slide. So we can practice or go over some method number 1, or we can continue to practice method 2. You're going to get the same answer either way, and I can help you refine your skills to make sure that you're getting these right the first time, okay? Look forward to your questions in class, and we'll see you then.